those sorts of metrics that help us as marketers understand how well known we are out in the market and what consumers kind of think of us. And what we've found in the case of both, so we've done two really interesting studies, one with Amazon and one with TikTok, where we've looked at the conversion rates on those platforms and looked at, who has the highest conversion rates, who has the lowest, what does that have to do with brand health. And in both cases really found that the higher the brand awareness, the better the conversion rate you're going to get through your performance marketing, your e-commerce marketing. So
welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen, and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, James Hurman, who over the course of his advertising career has won over 50 awards for advertising effectiveness. In 2013, he was named the world's #1 strategic planning director. Since then, James has co-founded and scaled multiple global brands, including brand health tracker, Tracksuit, and non-alcoholic canned cocktail producer AF Drinks. He also founded Previously Unavailable, a venture studio that helps startups create new products, scale business ventures, and build their brands. Welcome to the podcast, James.
great to be here, Alan.
Yes, and thank you for joining me and joining us. We're really excited to talk to you. Of course, today we're going to be, diving deep into your area of expertise, which is the relationship between brand building and e-commerce effectiveness. And, before we dive into all of that, I really am curious about your journey and, really what got you to, first off, founding those successful brands, and then I guess you could say pivoting a little bit to creating, your advertising agency and, all things alike.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I grew up in the advertising industry, so I was a strategic planner in the ad game, working in big agencies on big clients for the kind of former part of my career, and during that time, just became really interested in advertising and marketing effectiveness and how we use kind of large data sets of advertising data, of brand data, of commercial data to sort of understand the links between kind of what we do from a marketing and advertising standpoint and what the results of that are, and trying to sort of unlock, how do we get to better kind of commercial results through the advertising work that we do. And so for the past 15 years or so, I've been working in that advertising effectiveness field, sort of producing studies, doing large studies on what makes advertising work and how we can make it work better. And so that's been a big part of my career. And I now teach a program called the Master of Advertising Effectiveness, which is all about kind of teaching people those principles that have been derived from all of that data. And alongside that, sort of when I left the advertising industry and started my company, I really wanted to help companies use some of those principles, use better strategic and creative thinking in the development of innovative new companies. And so that's primarily what my kind of day job at Previously Unavailable involves, is investing in and working with young companies who are seeking to be the great global brands of tomorrow.
Okay.
And along the way, ended up starting some companies out of our studio, like the drinks company AF that
Mm-hmm.
that you mentioned, and Tracksuit, which is, as you said, a brand health tracking startup, which is now operational in the US and Canada and
Okay.
Australia, New Zealand, UK, and so and that kind of allows me a new and really big data set to sort of to use to understand how brands are growing, and what we can learn from how brands grow from kind of little startups into big global companies.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you for sharing that background. And you're totally correct. Being able to have your brands yourself on your own, and being able to push those out to the market, do everything it takes to kind of get them out there. Really, really gives you kind of hands-on expertise when you're dealing with clients. And I'm really curious about specifically your brand AF Drinks, which is, you said, or as I said in the intro, it's a non-alcoholic drink. And from what I know here in the US, the drink space is really, really, really competitive. And so
Yep.
I'm just curious about how you really took it from, the inception to getting it out there on the market. If you can tell us a little bit about it, is it in retail? Is it direct to consumer? How do you distribute?
Yeah, we started the company in the middle of the lockdown,
Oh,
during
okay.
COVID. So
Okay.
it sort of started there with meetings, over Zoom calls, and it really started because there was a group of us that founded the company who were taking a break from drinking alcohol, and couldn't really
Okay.
find a great sort of a great drink to fill the gap. And
Sure.
so we started making, traditional classic cocktails. Like the first range was a range of gin and tonics,
Hmm.
and really tried to make them as true to the experience of drinking an alcoholic beverage as possible. And so we
Okay.
developed a really kind of unique, kind of secret ingredient that we call Afterglow, which is a
Okay.
natural extract which gives you a bit of heat on the palate
Okay.
as you drink the drink. So it sort of mimics that pleasant warmth that you get of
Hmm.
drinking alcohol, while also tasting just like a real gin and tonic, or a real
Okay.
Paloma, or a real, Aperol spritz, or what have you. And
Right.
so that started in New Zealand, where the market was pretty. I mean, it's amazing when you look at the non-alcoholic drinks market, from beer to wines to cocktails. Even going back 3 or 4 years, there was very little out there. And so
Hmm.
when we started, we were really a kind of, a really early player in that category.
Okay.
And so built that up in New Zealand, got to a pretty strong leadership position in terms of market share in New Zealand before coming to the States, and now we're available in all over the place. So you can buy us on
Okay.
Amazon, you can buy us in Target and Walmart and
Okay.
Sprouts, and in a growing sort of number of retailers right across the US.
Okay.
And the US has kind of embraced, just particularly over the last year or so, I think, the
Okay.
big retailers have started to embrace non-alcoholic, cocktail substitutes, and so yeah, we kind of we've been a sort of first mover in that category growth in
Okay.
the US, and we think, of course, we would say this, but I reckon it's true, that we've got the kind of the beverage that really does taste the best. So a lot of
Okay.
non-alcoholic, or a lot of people sort of, sober curious people dabbling with these drinks, find that
Right.
often they don't taste too great, but we really worked
Yes.
hard on the taste being kind of really just as good as it would be if you ordered that cocktail at a bar. So
Okay.
that's played to our advantage in terms of
Okay.
the product really stacking up.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. You've definitely piqued my curiosity. I'm not really a big alcoholic drinker on my end. Very occasionally, just special occasions usually. And so, yeah, you've definitely sparked my curiosity. I will check it out. I think I've had some in the past that are, like you said, these kind of mocktails or whatever. And, like
Mm,
you said, they're just okay. So
yeah.
you're there. I'm very curious now. So I think I will. take a look and try one. And I'll definitely hit you up and let you know what I think for sure.
Great.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that I want to note to that, because you mentioned, a few things. You're selling that in retail. You're also selling it on Amazon. And one of the things that you mentioned that I often hear from e-commerce brands, especially if they're startups, is kind of I guess a hesitation to being first to the market, especially in a product category that there's not a lot there, because
Mm,
you know you don't really have a lot of data as far as if it's going to be worth the investment. Is it selling? Do we have some competitors in the space that we can kind of maybe piggyback off of as far as, SEO and those types of
mm.
things? But when you're in a new space, it definitely kind of takes some guts. So I'm curious, as far as your e-commerce strategy is concerned, what were some things that you did early on to really get it out there and get
Yeah.
awareness?
Yeah, I think if you're looking to be the first or a very early mover in a new category, you've really got the job of kind of building the category, right, as much as
Okay,
building the
right.
product. And so you
Yes.
do face challenges like, in the early days, the retailers didn't know where to put us, right, in the
I
grocery
can
store.
imagine.
So do they put us in the alcohol section? Do they put us in the
Yep.
soft drink section? And so there was a
Yeah.
lot of work with them to kind of try and figure out, right, well, where's the best place in the store for this to go? And obviously, sometimes you have some influence over those conversations. Sometimes you end up, on a shelf that you'd rather not be on. But
Yeah.
that's kind of part of the game in terms of category creation. I think also from a consumer perspective, you're looking to, rather than just simply say why your beverage is sort of different from the competition when there isn't any, you're trying to kind of make people feel like they want to enter this category. So we did a lot of work
Mhm.
in the early days just looking um, at the celebrities who weren't
Okay.
drinking, right? Who'd either
Okay.
cut down on
Interesting.
alcohol or they had, they didn't drink at all. And we were looking
Hmm.
at celebrities like Pharrell Williams and Tyler the Creator and Sarah
Hmm.
Silverman and Bradley Cooper and a bunch of people who weren't drinking. And
Okay.
what we found is when people found out that those famous people that they look up to and admire weren't drinking, that actually made them feel better about trying to cut down on alcohol themselves. So,
I
for
see.
us, we could have taken the track, of saying this is why alcohol's bad for you and this is why you should not drink. And in fact, what we found was people like being inspired more than they like being growled at or told they're doing the wrong thing, right? And so
For sure.
a lot of the strategies being about like how do we make not drinking cool, right? So we gave the brand the name AF. In the States it's called Free AF. AF kind of stands for alcohol free. It also stands for as fuck, and so it's kind of like
Hmm.
it's a play there. And
Yep.
we did a lot of work in the early days playing on that that AF name, and really just trying to present the brand as something that wasn't a kind of a sacrifice or a compromise, but was just as good and fun as drinking a kind of a real cocktail, and sort of
Hmm.
using, really telling the stories of well-known people who are cutting back on alcohol and positioning that as something which is kind of a cool modern thing to do, as opposed to
Yeah.
a kind of thing you do if you're pregnant or you're a teetotaler or kind of sort of
Hmm.
whatever you might do. So that's how, I mean, strategically, that's how it started. And then from an e-commerce perspective, it's really about on the brand side, really going out and doing, we've done a lot of brand work from the start. So not just sort
Hmm.
of online, but, billboards and radio ads and sort of all of that more traditional brand building stuff, alongside obviously a lot of online marketing and driving people to our own e-commerce store and to
Hmm.
Amazon and those sorts of things, and trying to game that system somewhat through
Yep.
doing things like taster packs where you get a selection of all the different varieties, so you enable people to sample really easily. um,
Hmm.
and we also did a really interesting thing, again, not e-commerce but kind of regular commerce, of starting a bottle store that sells our drinks, but also sells all the other non-alcoholic drinks from around the world. So
Okay.
we have a
Interesting.
shop that kind of, the shop is there to kind of build the category as much as to build
Okay.
our own brand and our own sales, and to
Yeah.
give consumers a sense that you can come into this world of non-alcoholic drinks and there's actually heaps to take part in. There's great
Mm-hmm.
non-alcoholic beers, there's great non-alcoholic wines, there's a range of great cocktails.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, a big part of our job has been kind of convincing consumers that this is a cool world to be part of, and you don't need to be stuck with an orange juice or a Diet Pepsi or whatever. There's a
Right.
whole world of like amazing
Okay.
tasting stuff for you to
Yeah.
kind of get into if you're pulling back on booze.
Okay. Yeah. So interesting. So you guys just were not afraid to expose your customers to, uh, to the whole ecosystem and to all, even other brands that are there and the competitors, because your job was not only to sell but to build the category. So it
Yeah,
really makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
What have you seen not only with your brand but brands that you've dealt with, the correlation between brand awareness and then conversion rates?
Yeah.
Is there a direct relation to that based on, if you expose your brand to, you know, a certain, let's say, number of people in your particular category, does that directly correlate to your conversion rates and then your growth efficiency, or what would you
Yeah,
say?
yeah, totally. So we've done a couple of studies. So one of the other companies I founded is called Tracksuit. So we track brand health.
Sure.
So what that means basically is we track how many, what percentage of the market is aware of your brand,
Right.
what percentage would consider buying from you, what percentage prefers buying from you. Those sorts of
Mhm.
metrics that help us as marketers understand, how well known we are out in the market and what consumers kind of think of us.
Mhm.
And what we've found in the case of both, so we've done two really interesting studies, one with Amazon and one with TikTok, where we've looked at
Mhm.
the conversion rates on those platforms and looked at who has the highest conversion rates, who has the lowest, what does that have to do with brand health, and in both cases really found that the higher the brand awareness, the better the conversion rate you're going to get through your performance marketing, your e-commerce marketing. So
Okay.
and those have been pretty big studies done in a very sort of scientific, statistically robust way,
Okay.
and it's really interesting. And the reason for that, right, is if you think about any category, you have two types of demand in any category. And one of those types I call existing demand, which is the
Mhm.
demand that's in the market right now. So the people that are ready to buy from the category today. And then there's a much larger group of people in any category who aren't going to buy from the category today, but they will come into the category and buy at some point in the future. So
Sure.
when I'm doing when I talk on stage, one of the things that I always do is I get the audience, do a little exercise with the audience. I say, can you put your hand up if you're in the process of buying a new mobile phone, right?
Mhm.
You're buying one today, or you're going to buy one in the next couple of weeks, and a few hands will go up, three or four
Yeah.
hands will go up, and then I'll say,
Mhm.
okay, who can you put your hand up if you think you'll buy a new mobile phone over the next 2 years? And everyone's hands go up. And
Yeah.
that's a demonstration, right? That in any category, there's a small group of people that are in the category and they're ready to buy right
Mhm.
now. And then there's this much larger group who will come into the category at some point in future, but they're
Okay.
not kind of ready to buy right now. That's what I
Right.
call future demand.
Mhm.
And the way that things work, right? As people come into categories and they're ready to buy, they gravitate towards things that they're familiar with. So we have a kind of really strong familiarity bias. All
Mhm.
humans have it. We tend to like things and choose things and gravitate towards things that we're familiar with. That's just something
Right.
that comes from the way that our brains evolved, and we're all subject to it.
Mhm.
And so the game of marketing is when people come into a category, if you've already made them familiar with you as a brand, they're much more likely to gravitate towards you and to buy what you've
Mm.
got to sell.
I see.
And so from a, from an e-commerce point of view, when you're just doing sort of performance marketing or e-commerce and you're just reaching out to those people that are in the category and ready to buy, you're talking to quite a small group of people. And of course, it's useful to talk to them because you want them to buy you instead of one of your competitors, right? And
Right.
so you do need to do that sort of marketing. But the other form of marketing, the other half of your job is to make sure that when people do come into the category, they gravitate towards you and are more likely to kind of, click on or act on the performance marketing that you're doing. And that's
Mhm.
what these two studies have sort of really proven out, that when
Right.
people are aware of a brand, when they come into the category, they're much more likely to buy from that brand. So that means that conversion rates will be higher.
I
Um,
see.
and it means that we can grow more sustainably because we have generated that level of awareness. So the
Wow.
Amazon study was a really interesting one in which we showed that if you're an Amazon seller, you can probably get up to kind of about 200 to 300 grand
Hmm.
revenue per month without having very much awareness at all. Right. So you can go
Hmm.
out, and because Amazon's such a massive platform with so many millions of people there every day buying from it, there's a
Yeah.
lot of existing demand on that platform, right? So you can, if
Hmm.
you've got a really good product, you can kind of, without people even knowing about you, you can put that product there. There'll be people that are in the category at the moment who will buy your product. And that gives us this sort of false sense that actually we don't need brand awareness or sort of, just a strong brand to succeed.
Hmm.
But what the study also shows is once you get past that point of about 300K per month, it becomes harder and more expensive to find new customers and to grow more. If you're a
Yeah.
brand with really low awareness, you sort of get up to a certain point, then you plateau. It gets really hard and really expensive to grow any further. Whereas if you scale your brand awareness at the same time as you're scaling your performance or e-commerce spend, those things can continue to grow and you can grow into a kind of big market leading brand. And so that's sort of the message that I give to marketers is, you don't just have that one job of kind of converting sales with performance and e-commerce
Hmm.
marketing. That is one of your jobs for sure, but your other job to make sure your company can get, up to a very big, very valuable, very profitable company is to work on building your brand and building your awareness among that much larger group of people who are going to come into the category later, who are going to be your
Right.
future buyers, who are going to account for your future growth, which of course you want next year, you will want
Yeah.
next year. And so it's really important to do that job too and do all that stuff that's really different to kind of e-commerce and
Hmm.
performance marketing. It is doing this sort of stuff that we think of as much more traditional, like TV
Hmm.
advertising or outdoor or radio or
Yeah.
these sorts of things which reach lots and lots of people. They're not quite as good for telling us exactly who they reached and exactly who clicked on the ad and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they're very, very good at making sure that big groups of future buyers know about us so that when they
Yeah.
come into the category, we're more likely to attract
Yeah,
them.
that's the key thing there. Big groups of future buyers, and I think e-commerce businesses can be a little bit leery to go that route and focus a lot on it, just because there's no direct sale at the end of doing all of that. Like I said, you can do a whole campaign where you're exposing your brand. Maybe you're just let's say you're doing some sponsorships at a outdoor festival where you've got signage different places, and like you said, that type of thing is hard to track. You don't know,
Mm,
obviously maybe there's thousands and thousands of people that are going to these types of events. They're going to see your brand, but you can't walk away the next week and say, okay, after this event is over, all right, I'm going to expect those 10,000 people that attended the event to automatically buy. You can't do that. So it's kind of a long game, I think. It's
it is a long
and it's
game.
something you
Yeah.
have to consistently do.
Yeah, and we've been brought up, I mean, particularly marketers have been brought up in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, have really been um, conditioned to expect an immediate return from what they spend on marketing, right? And so
Yeah.
a lot of companies are, do feel really hesitant about doing stuff that they don't see an immediate return from, because they wonder, well, what's the return on that investment? Is that actually doing anything?
Yeah.
And as you
Exactly.
say, when you do, anything which builds the brand, you're not going to see that show up in the sales data immediately, because you're talking to all of those people who aren't yet in the market. So they're not going to
There
buy
are.
yet, and so they're not going to show
Exactly.
up in that data. And so that's why, having your kind of your performance or your e-commerce dashboard, which tells you, what's kind of happening in the moment, is really important. And alongside that, having a brand tracking
Mm-hmm.
dashboard like Tracksuit, which
Mm-hmm.
tells you, not what you're selling today, but how successful you're likely to be in the future, because you're growing
Mm-hmm.
your brand's awareness out there in market. It's important to have
Yeah.
those two things side by side. So you've got a sense of how are we doing today? How do we optimize for that? But also,
Mm-hmm.
how are we building into the future, and how do we use the right sort of tracking that does show the return on that brand building investment,
Right.
because we can see awareness going up, or we can see consideration going up, and that tells us we're probably going to, be good at growing into the future.
Yeah, for sure. Those two things are very important, like you said, to really monitor side by side on a consistent basis. I wanted to see if you, with the work you're doing in your advertising firm, as well as your own brands, possibly could you share an example of a specific business that's leveraged their increased brand awareness to improve their overall results? And was there anything specific that they did that maybe stood out to you?
Yeah, if I can, yeah, let me think of what's a great example. I mean, let's keep talking about AF and Tracksuit, really, because those are probably, two really good examples.
Sure.
So, with AF drinks, it's not just about e-commerce, although we do have our own store and we do sell on Amazon, and that's a big part of the business. Really, for that business to become a big global market leader, it needs to do great in retail,
Hmm.
in proper old school kind of bricks and mortar retail. Still, the majority of our sales come through grocery stores, supermarkets, big chains like Walmart and Target and those sorts of places. And with those stores, you can advertise on their kind of internal retail media, of course, which is great. But a big part of our job is, how do we get people, you know, before they come into the store, thinking about AF, rather than just trying to introduce them when they're at the shelf. And so a lot of the work that we do is in the States is more traditional. It's more about PR. It's more about outdoor. It's more about sort of doing things that are going to travel and reach people that we know aren't going to buy from the category just yet, but
Hmm.
are going to be those buyers in 6 months or a year's time.
Okay.
And so certainly what we've seen, like everyone sees, is the conversion on Amazon, the conversion on our own store, the conversion inside retail stores improves the more we kind of drive awareness up for the brand doing those external activities. For Tracksuit's really interesting because it's a B2B software business, right? So really
Right.
different from consumer marketing. And we
Hmm.
tend to believe in B2B, that B2B is completely different to marketing B2C brands and works in a completely
Yeah.
different way.
Right.
That's not true at all. And so all of the sort of the research that effectiveness researchers like myself have done around the world sort of shows that B2B brands are built in more or less exactly the same way as B2C brands. You still need to build the awareness of the brand among a big audience of buyers that will buy in future. You still benefit from doing things that are creative and that which stand out and engage those people in a way that isn't about click here and buy now, but it is about leaving a kind of a memory in their heads of you, so that when they
Hmm.
come into the market, they think of you. And so at Tracksuit, we do a ton of work. When you're an early stage startup, you're not doing big television campaigns and things like that, but we do a lot of
Right.
kind of community building, a lot of events, a lot of publishing of content, which is geared, not to drive a sale today, but to, build ourselves a massive network of brand marketers around the world who kind of love what we do. And so we have a lot of fun. Tracksuit's called Tracksuit. It's a fun name. It's a brand tracking business,
Hmm.
but it's,
Right.
and it's in a category where, to be honest, brand tracking research is not the most exciting area of
Mhm.
marketing, right?
Right. It's not.
But we've made it a ton more exciting, giving it a cool
Yeah.
name, making the
Yeah.
product experience way more delightful,
Mhm.
wearing tracksuits on stage at events, doing
Okay.
things which really attract attention, and
Mhm.
then doing these studies, the Amazon and TikTok ones which I mentioned, which are
Mhm.
more about going out and educating the market and doing things which are, again, not necessarily going to drive a sale right now, but are going to
Mhm.
broaden the awareness of our brand and our company and our product
Yep.
to buyers that'll buy in future. And so that's been a real focus from day one, and we've grown from, in 4 years, from, not existing to being about a 20 million annual recurring revenue business at this point, and still growing very,
Okay.
very quickly. So we'd be, Tracksuit would be one of, if not the fastest growing software startup ever out of New Zealand.
Okay.
And a big
Awesome.
part of that is because we've focused not just on trying to, get the sales motion right and get the performance
Mhm.
marketing working and all that kind of stuff, but really trying to kind of go, how do we build this as a brand? How do we build this company into something that marketers fall in love with and really want to kind of be around and see
Mhm.
as a real sort of, a friend to them in their work.
Yeah. Exciting stuff. Yeah, and that's really good stuff that you guys have been able to do there with your particular brand. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's also interesting. You mentioned, of course, Amazon and doing all of this research and when building the brands. Um, what have you seen as far as some of the social platforms, as far as brand building, and the role of brand building when it comes to the social platforms like TikTok, Instagram? Is
Yeah,
it just as significant?
yeah,
Your focus on those, or what would
yeah.
you say, or does it depend on your specific category?
Again, it's kind of very similar to Amazon in the case of what I was saying before. Like, you can start and grow to a point pretty quickly without any kind of, without building a brand. So it's true that if you create an innovative product that solves a problem that people have just been waiting to have solved, and there's no one else out there solving that problem, or, producing a product quite like you do, um, there's always going to be a group of what I would call pre-existing demand out there, right?
Okay.
Consumers who have that problem and have been waiting for a solution for it and are happy to part with their money to choose that solution. So this is why on the social platforms and on the retail platforms, we see brands grow pretty quickly in their early days. If they do a good job of the performance marketing, if they do a good job of the product and they put it in front of the right people, they will
Hmm.
grow to a point of attracting lots of those people who are in the market for that solution. What
Okay.
the problem is, and this has been seen, this is common across all of the social platforms, not just TikTok, but across all of, Meta's platforms and Google and all the rest of it, is that, you grow really quickly for the first little bit, and then things get
Hmm.
hard. You hit a
Yes.
plateau point where all of a sudden it's like, why is my cost of acquisition going up? Why is
Hmm.
why am I finding it harder and harder to find new customers? Why is my ROI going down? What's happening here? And the
Hmm.
reason is that we saturate ourselves out of, we reach the sort of maximum limit of people that are in the category right now and who are
Yeah.
willing to choose an unfamiliar brand. Right. So the thing
Right.
about early adopters is they have less of a familiarity bias. They'll take a chance on
True.
unfamiliar brands. But once you get to a certain point, say you've attracted kind of, 2% of the market. So you've built yourself actually a pretty big, pretty good looking business. If you
Hmm.
want to get up to 10% of the market, you're playing a totally different game. You need to start attracting people who aren't going to just, click on the unfamiliar innovative thing. You're talking to the much broader mass market who actually does need to feel familiar with a brand before they click on it and buy it. And so it's the same with, when we started this research around this concept of future demand, it actually came off a discussion with people at Meta who were saying, we see this common pattern of brands growing really quickly and then plateauing
Hmm.
out, and the metrics start to, go south.
Yeah.
And they were wondering about why that was. And the venture capital firms were wondering why that was, because they saw lots of kind of small businesses early stage businesses go through the same
Hmm.
pattern. And
Yes.
the reason for it is that at a certain point, you actually need brand awareness to continue to grow. You need to
I
be
see.
making the future buys of the category.
I see.
You need to become familiar to those. So we see that on TikTok, we see it on Google, and we see it on Amazon, and we see it kind of everywhere. So if you want to grow
Yeah.
if you just want a nice small business that's super efficient,
Hmm.
then just doing performance marketing, go nuts. If you want a big business that's going to become a market leader, that's going to become highly profitable, very valuable, take a meaningful share of the market, you need to be doing both brand building and performance marketing. There's no way of performance
Gotcha.
marketing your way to, a proper, really big, really valuable, really profitable company.
Yeah.
And we saw that kind of, there's probably two really good examples of that. One is Airbnb, went from
Hmm.
kind of being a profitless, listed US tech company,
Yeah. Yeah.
shifted from doing pretty much solely performance marketing into doing much more, putting much more of their spend into brand building,
Hmm.
and became much more profitable and continued to grow. And that was a wild success.
Yeah.
The other example is Nike. Nike had their former CEO came in, got rid of all the brand stuff, really doubled down on performance, and wanted to see the ROI from every marketing dollar spent. That went
Hmm.
really badly. Their business has
Yeah.
not been good for the last year or so because they've over-indexed on that. They put too much into their performance marketing and their retail stuff and not enough into their brand, and they really went backwards in a big way, leading
Mm.
to the exit of that CEO. And so
Right.
those are probably two instructive examples at the top end of the market of
Mm.
companies that have either embraced brand or sort of divested in brand, and the sort of the
Sure.
results that come from that. So it's and the other thing I'd say on brand building on the social platforms is the other thing that we see far too little of is brands communicating in more of an emotional way rather than a rational way. Now, what we
Hmm.
know from the data is that if we have performance marketing to people that are in the market right now, that existing demand group, we can be really rational with them. They're in the market, they're looking to make a decision. Giving them features and benefits and rational information about our product is exactly the right thing to do.
Right.
When we're building brand and wanting to create future demand, it doesn't work very well at all. When people aren't in the
I see.
category, they don't care at all about what your product features and benefits are.
Yeah. True.
What our job with them is to stand out, get noticed, and get remembered. It's not to get
Hmm.
clicked
Yeah.
on; it's to get remembered.
Yeah.
And we
And the way to do
remember
that is through the emotions. Yeah.
totally through the emotions, because you know what? We remember feelings way
Yep.
longer than we remember facts. And there's
Yeah.
academic research around this. If I
Hmm.
told you a few facts today, you'd forget them probably by the end of the day, or at least in a week's
Exactly.
time. If I make
Yep.
you feel a certain way, you'll remember that feeling for months or years. Right?
Yep.
So
That's very
the
true.
human brain has a much better memory of feelings. So if we want to leave people remembering us when they come into the market in a year's time, we do that through
Hmm.
feelings, not through facts. They will forget
Yeah.
everything we say to them, but they won't
Yep. For
forget
sure.
how we made them feel.
Yep, that's the bottom line. Very, very well said. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, James. I really appreciate you having you on. I've learned a ton. I know our listeners and viewers have as well. Before we close things out, I always like to shift gears so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing any closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Oh man, a fun fact about myself. Boy, that is quite tricky. Okay, I'll show you. I'll show you one. I've got one tattoo. Oh
Okay.
man, it's going to be hard to show this. Okay, you can't really
Okay.
see it, but it's an
Okay. I
A.
think I can see it there. Yep.
Yeah, actually, if I go like this, it's A for Annabelle. It's my wife, and when I put my finger
Okay.
there, I can feel my heartbeat.
Oh, okay. Wow. Nice. Okay.
That's my fun fact. I've got a functional
Okay.
tattoo, which
Okay. That's
it's probably functional romance or something like that. I call it.
yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I like that. Very, 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 like you said, functional, practical, and it's a forever reminder of your wife. So good
There you
stuff,
go.
man.
Nice.
Well, thanks for sharing that, of course. And lastly, before we do let you go, if our listeners and viewers want to reach out to you and pick your brain any more about any of these topics that we discussed, what's the best way for them to reach you?
If you go to jameshurman.com, JAMESHURMAN, that will tell you all you need to know about me, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Well, we will be sure to have the links in the show notes so people can connect with you there. And once again, it's been a pleasure talking to you, James. We really appreciate having you on the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. You have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.